matter what, people will commit to misunderstanding you. What's most important is your commitment to understanding yourself. Hello, you guys. My name is Nkiriko Madani, known as NK, and welcome back to Misunderstood. Coming to you live from the CoverGirl studio. This is my, I believe, 7th month in the CoverGirl studio, and I am so thankful for this opportunity to get to come and record this podcast. All the girls are so nice here, and every single time they give me a little gift, all their new product. And the new product today is the CoverGirl Eye Enhancer Wrap Tubing Mascara. I just put it on right before filming and I can attest to how great it is. I love tubing mascara. I think tubing mascara is such an OG for all the girls who grew up in the last decade. We love our tubing mascara. And I was told that this is CoverGirl's very first tubing mascara, which I think is a game changer, especially because CoverGirl has been around for so long. And personally, I definitely do high-end, low-end makeup. I love Sephora. I am a Sephora Rouge, which essentially just means I spend way too much money at Sephora. But I also have a mix of lower-end drugstore makeup. As we pretty much all know, CoverGirl is in most drugstores. So having this in my arsenal now is a game changer because I used to spend so much money buying mascara at other places. I can buy this for less than half the cost and it works amazing. If you're seeing this on video right now, my lashes look great. And I also didn't even put that much on. So if I really sat down and put on a lot, I would definitely see a dramatic difference in my lash length. Also, happy November. By the time you're listening to this episode, it will be November. This is the first episode of November. If I did my calculations right, we have 8 weeks left of 2025, which is insane. It's wild. It's crazy. It makes me feel shocked because where did 2025 go? If I take a snapshot of this entire year, when I started 2025, could not have ever dreamed or imagined the year to go as it did, which is why I have to ask the question, what happened to your goals? Today, we are talking about your goals, my goals. We are talking about our goals and essentially how to hold ourselves accountable before year end. Before we get started, take some time right now to rate this podcast 5 stars. Rating the show helps extremely to continue to bring you guys weekly episodes. It is a free and easy way to support this podcast. So please take some time to rate this podcast, Misunderstood, 5 stars on Apple and Spotify. Thank you so much. As I just mentioned, we have 8 weeks left of 2025. That is not nothing. A lot of people, myself included, in my past, essentially wrote off the year after October. October is my favorite month, and I always feel these negative feelings towards November and December. I have historically felt this way. So I've essentially written off the last 2 months of the year and just said, okay, well, we can try again next year. I'm just going to throw in the towel and not work towards the things that I wrote down at the beginning of said year. And what I want to say to my younger self, and also what I will say to you, is that we must honor the commitments we made to ourselves. We didn't just write those down for no reason. We wrote those down because once upon a time, we felt that way. And once upon a time, we were very inspired and very forthright with wanting better in our life. For me, it's really, really important to remember everything to my best ability of how I want my life to improve. If you look at the entire year and you think, did I grow? Did I change? And if the answer is no, then you did something wrong. And that's not me trying to give you a hard time. That's me just being honest and giving you some tough love. Because I believe that tough love, although yes, it is tough, it's coming from a place of care. A lot of people do need a little push to strive for more and stop being complacent in their life. I know I did. When I think back to even 4 years ago, I was in a huge transition in my life. I really feel like that was one of the biggest character arcs of my life thus far. I was about 26, about to turn 27, and I wanted better in my life. I wanted more. I wanted to change everything about my life, but I knew that was going to take time. And here I am, over 4 years later, on this mic, having a podcast. I always thought that I could be exactly who I wanted to be, exactly who I knew I was inside. I always thought I could, but there were so many ways that I was hitting roadblocks and I really struggled with getting from point A to point B, which is essentially how to take your goal from a thought in your head or something that you've written on paper to actually living it out in your reality. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So a few ways that I strive to hold myself accountable, and these are tried and true things that I have done in my life and I'm imparting to you, are the following. Writing things down. I am the biggest proponent on writing everything down. Your notes app is literally the most sacred place ever. It's under lock and key. You will never see it, but trust and believe that it is the place where I write down everything and nothing in there is stupid or too dumb or too small. My biggest goddamn dreams are written down there. And I look at it almost every day to remind myself what I'm working for, what I'm striving for. It's so important to remind yourself every day. And honestly, when it is written down in your words, in your handwriting, that is you saying it to yourself. You can't tell me there's nothing stronger than that. The next way I really love to hold myself accountable is setting timers. All right, so your girl has had a long-standing history with not being on time to things. It is one of my fatal flaws. I don't love that about myself, and I've wanted to change that and re-engineer how I approach it for such a long time. I've never given myself enough time to do certain things, but then I also have procrastinated a lot of things in my life. And it's funny because a lot of people see me as someone who's really organized and really put together. Those are not wrong. It's also in the same vein, there's so many silent things that I am working on that I know that I'm putting off and not facing head on. So with setting timers, I've found that I've been able to quite literally hold myself accountable in such a real-time, tangible way. For example, actually this morning on the way to recording this podcast, I knew that I had a set time to get ready. I literally set 3 separate timers in order to get ready. I set a timer for doing my makeup. I set a timer for doing my hair. I set a timer for picking out an outfit, trying it on, making sure I like it. And then I set my final timer for the time that I must walk out of the door. I have to walk out of this door by this time to be able to get here on time. Yes, I'm working towards my goal of making this podcast so amazing and having so many listeners and really forging a community here, but also it's a respect thing. You need to respect the people who are also taking time out of their day to host you. CoverGirl is hosting me in the freaking Empire State Building, and I'm so damn thankful. If I am late, that is honestly being very rude to them, and it's being rude to the people who have pulled the strings and made sure that I've been able to come here, not only right now, but for this entire year, essentially, so far. So it is up to me. I need to hold myself accountable, and I need to put forth my best effort and also have respect for not only myself, but the people around me. And setting timers has been so great. I remember talking about this in a previous podcast episode where with work endeavors, setting timers has been so great because setting timers has showed me that I can actually get something done way faster than I think. Setting timers puts time back into perspective. I found myself being very lackadaisical, being very slow when I don't have a timer. But when I have a timer, I am being very regimented, being very succinct with my tasks and what I'm doing and pivoting to this, that, and the other. And I'm honestly way more productive with a timer. So I highly recommend trying out a timer. It might feel really strange and uncomfortable at first. It did for me, but just like anything, you have to build a habit. If you've heard of the pretty widely known saying, it takes 21 days to build a habit. And I don't know how true the 21 days is. However, I've started a lot of habits and then fell off, but for certain things that I really value and I really found integrated well in my life, I do believe after about 3 weeks, I just didn't stop doing it. I just kept on doing it, and then they became a staple in my life and in my routine. The third way I hold myself accountable is being more disciplined. The word discipline is very overarching. It encompasses a lot, but what I'll say here is discipline will be the single most important thing you ever do in your life, because when you take away motivation and you take away every other factor that comes and goes, your discipline will remain. And your discipline will get you through the hard days. And your discipline will be there, even when you don't physically or mentally want to be. The ways that I've really grown in my discipline over the past few years is really breaking myself down to build myself back up. Referring back to around 4 years ago when I quite literally did an overhaul of my life and I assessed, all right, well, I don't want to be this version of myself anymore. I know that I have more capable and I need to see to it that I hit the potential that I know I can be, because it would be my biggest regret if I didn't. So then I went to the drawing board and I thought, what are a few key things that I want to be more disciplined on? And that's really important. Do not, I repeat, do not try to re-engineer your entire life all at once. You will be so overwhelmed and then you will just stop. If you've heard of decision fatigue, which I have decision fatigue all the time, and I'm actually quite an indecisive person in a lot of respects. But what I will say is that when you tackle a few things at a time, or even one thing at a time, baby steps, you are way, way more effective than if you try to re-engineer your entire life in a day or in a week, because that's so unrealistic. So again, back to 4 years ago, I remember myself first wanting to start strength training. I knew the benefits of strength training through hearing about it from so many other people, and I wanted to get stronger. Strength training helps you in so many other ways in your life, which is why I wanted to start there, because I knew that it would be a really positive ripple effect in my life. I knew that if I started strength training and then if I made it a habit, kept on going, which I did, in my deepest, darkest pits of depression at that time, the only thing I did was go to the gym. I went 4 times a week, which is kind of a lot, but I went 4 times a week for 5 months. Not only did I physically transform, almost looked unrecognizable. I lost 20 pounds. I gained so much muscle. I was so toned. I looked optically like a different person. However, I think the bigger benefit was my mental clarity. I also stopped drinking at that time, which is a different subset of that time period where that was another thing I wanted to tackle. Drinking as much alcohol as I used to really was a hindrance in my life, in my relationships, in my self-confidence, in how I viewed myself. So I did not drink for 3 whole months during that time of strength training. And wow, those two in tandem truly transformed me from inside out. I had so much more clarity in my life. I had so much more energy. I was sleeping better. I just had a better outlook on life and I felt more positive on a day-to-day because I was taking care of myself in very tangible ways. I was taking stock in what I did not like about my lifestyle, what I wanted to accomplish, and I did the damn thing, which is what I want you to do. These are just 2 examples. I could really talk about this all day because there are so many more examples of that time period. And even now of how I have really held myself accountable and saw to it that I need to get my goals and I need to strive for better, which is why I'm sharing this with you. I know that you and whoever else is listening to this podcast, you want better in your life. You find yourself maybe at a crossroads where you don't know where to turn. You might really just want to find your potential in your life. You might feel stuck and you just want something comforting and to know that it is possible to do all the things that you want to do. So if any of that applies to you, you are in the right place. I promise you. This time of year brings along a lot of feelings, a lot of various feelings. For me specifically, I do tend to spiral a bit. Even though I have healed a lot of parts in myself, that doesn't mean I'm perfect and that doesn't mean I'm fully healed. Oh no, I am absolutely not. There are so many things and struggles I'm still facing as we speak right now, but I'm human and so are you. And spiraling is not bad, but we need to be able to pinpoint why we're spiraling to be able to work through it. But back to the spiraling for 1 second. I find myself spiraling because I think about all of the big goals and the big plans and the big dreams I wrote down at the beginning of the year and why I haven't hit those goals yet. But first, I have to take a step back and I have to see what goals are actually attainable in the time frame that I'm given. Back to the beginning of this episode, I said we have 8 weeks left of 2025. I have to look at the goals that I wrote And I have to be honest and ask myself a few things. I'm asking you these exact questions. So you ask yourself, what do you have control over? What is my highest priority out of my current list? How can I tangibly show up for myself today to make progress towards said goals? I think those three questions are extremely powerful because it forces us to take a mirror to ourselves. Here's the thing. The word accountability literally means you are looking inward to see what you take responsibility over and how you can then apply that in your life. That's literally what accountability means, the literal definition. And there's discomfort around holding ourselves accountable. Of course, we want to blame other people before we blame ourselves. I know that so well because there's so many times where I have pointed the finger rather than looking at my own and seeing where I could have done better or where I fell through the cracks in some way, shape, or form. We feel uncomfortable about holding ourselves accountable because we feel like we can't correct the mistakes or we're not willing to correct the mistakes that we're making. And this is what stops us from achieving our goals. Think about anything that you have thought was too hard or too big of a task. So then you're overwhelmed and then you say to yourself, I'm not going to do it because of X excuse, X example, and then you put it on the back burner. And then weeks, months go by and you have just effectively forgotten about your goals. That is the cycle. That is how it works. A hard part about accountability is admitting when we've made a mistake, is admitting our shortcomings, the things that we might be embarrassed to talk about. There's so many things that I have been embarrassed to talk about, just like anybody else. And I find myself using that embarrassment as the excuse to then not hold myself accountable, to then not achieve the goal. Do you see how it spirals? It's such a negative thought loop. But we have to address why we feel that way, why we feel that we are not able to hit this goal, strive for this opportunity. There's a why. Which is why I love writing my thoughts down and writing my feelings down. Once I sit with myself and really understand, all right, where's this coming from? Because it is coming from a place. It might be a trauma response. It might be a reaction or how someone else perceived you, which is a lot of it. There can be so many sources to explain why you feel the way you do, but it is up to you to find the root of the problem and the source and to tackle it head on. Next, I want to talk about giving yourself grace. I can sit here and drill into you accountability, don't be embarrassed, reach your goals. All right, but that is teamed with giving yourself grace while also pushing yourself. So the first bit of what I just talked about is pushing yourself to understand the sources of where you can strive and where you can be better. Giving yourself grace through that pursuit is the only real way you're actually going to not only get to the goal, but feel comforted in the journey. I talked about this in one of my earlier episodes of this podcast, how the journey to getting to your goals is actually just as important as the goal itself. It is. You never want to look back on a goal that you've written down and you've clearly wanted for however long, and you're only thinking about achieving it. All right, but there's always a story. There will always be a story to how you got there, and the story is the best damn part. So let's talk about giving ourselves grace. It is a true balance we all have to work on, and I'll be honest, there's times I give myself too much grace. There is a thing as too much grace. Too much grace can turn into making excuses for why I haven't started something. That is so valid. I want to more so focus on recognizing specifically how I am doing the best I can, while also striving for more. Because we can do both. So for those who are new to the podcast and haven't listened to some of the past few episodes, here's a little story to definitely detail what I am saying. I injured my knee back in June, and it was no small injury. I ended up partially tearing my meniscus in my right knee. And yes, this is the exact same knee I got ACL surgery on when I was 16. So you can imagine the literal spiral in my body as a 30-year-old who felt like she was on top of the world. I had run 2 half marathons this year. I was getting so fast with my running. I was running a 9-10 mile. I was so proud of how far I had come in such a short amount of time, and I felt on top of the world. And then when I got hurt, I spiraled. I was actually also depressed. I do not use that word lightly, I promise, but there are true signs of depression, and I did fit under those categories. And also, when I went to the doctor a few weeks ago, I was telling her about what was happening, and she also said, yeah, there is a lot of signs of depression that you were facing. I felt hopeless. I actually felt so hopeless. I could not walk for a week after I got hurt. It turned into not being able to have full range of motion for probably a month. I had to wear a knee brace for most of the summer, and I could not run for months. And that broke me because I had found something that I absolutely loved so much, and it felt like it got taken away from me so quickly. So damn quickly. So let's talk about the goal of all this and how this applies to giving yourself grace. After I ran my first race ever, which was my first half marathon ever as well, back in March, I was on a high and I told myself, all right, I'm going to qualify for the New York City Marathon next year, so 2026. That was my goal. I wrote it down the day after I finished the New York City half marathon this year. I knew that I probably wasn't going to qualify for time, and I also did not want to fundraise over $5,000 with a charity, so that left me with doing the 9+1 program. It is a program that the New York Road Runners puts on, which is the organization that hosts the New York City Marathon every single year. They have a program called 9+1, which essentially means you have to run 9 qualifying races as well as volunteer at 1 qualifying race in the same calendar year to be able to automatically qualify for the next year's marathon. Really cool that New York has that system because it allows more people to get to experience something so great. After I ran my first race and my first half marathon, I told myself, I will run a marathon one day, and I only want to run the New York City Marathon. I don't care to run any other one, but I knew in my heart, my goal is to run the New York City Marathon in 2026. So you can probably see where this is going. I told myself that in March. I got hurt in June. I spiraled all summer. And mind you, all summer, I still had races to run to work towards my 9+1 goal. I was in the middle of my 9+1 program once I got hurt. I had already pre-signed up for all of my races actually before I got hurt. What kind of timing is that? But what I told myself is, although I have this goal, I do need to give myself grace because I cannot physically run to the level I used to. I can't. I'm hurt. And that took a lot out of me. Lost my spark for a good amount of this year because of that injury. But I didn't let it fully break me. It almost did. I'm not even gonna lie. It almost did, but I didn't let it fully break me. I decided to give myself grace where I could. So even though I couldn't run to the speed and the level I used to, I still showed up to those very races, and I walked half of them. And I jogged a little bit, and then I walked, and that's okay because I am still choosing to honor the commitments I made to myself. I'm choosing to still be a fighter, even though it's hard. I'm choosing to hold myself accountable while also giving myself grace. This month, crossing fingers, we are starting physical therapy. I will definitely talk more about that as that develops. Giving yourself grace while also pushing yourself and striving for the goals that you set is a balance that you have to work on, but also it's really important to master that balance. The next point I want to talk about, do not underestimate what you can do with the time you are given. So like I said, we have 8 weeks. There's so much you can do in 8 weeks. 8 weeks is 2 whole months. We still have time. It's time to start chipping away at big goals and make actionable steps to achieve them. And I know that you do not want to end 2025 saying that you did not start that new project, go after that fitness goal, or apply to a new job. There is still time. A mini story to detail this. In October, I went to Vermont. It was amazing. I have the entire YouTube video up already. So if you're curious, go check that out. I'll also link it in the description of this episode. That was a perfect example of not underestimating the time I had. I had a free weekend in October. This is a place that I wanted to go for so long. I actually just got off the phone with one of my friends, and after telling her about how the trip went, she said, wait a minute, you've wanted to do this for so long. You've been talking about this for so long, and I'm so happy for you. And I'm so glad that you got to do something that you said that you wanted to do. I am very big on making sure that I am doing the things I said that I want to do. And sometimes, a lot of times, that means that you have to be willing to do it alone, and you have to be willing to do it if there's no one there around you. It builds character, and it allows you to also connect further with yourself. So I am very, very happy that I got to go to the state of Vermont, have officially gone to all of the East Coast states, which makes me really happy. And that's a big accomplishment and a big goal that I had that I'm so happy that I accomplished. You have to be willing to press the start button, even when things are not fully planned out. I'll be honest, there are so many things I wish I started sooner. So many things I was too scared to start because of others' judgment or my own self-doubt. But when I look back on all those events, I see myself now, someone who's pretty confident in herself, goes after what she wants, and is unapologetically herself. So what I would say to the previous version of me, and what I am saying to you, is don't let the fear of not feeling ready stop you from saying yes or getting started. It is a lot harder to sit on the sidelines and watch other people going for their dreams, reaching their milestones, and ultimately regretting that you didn't try. A very perfect example of this is this very podcast, Misunderstood. I had written this down in my planner in 2021. I went home last year and I have this box in my old room, the room I grew up in my home state, in the house I grew up in. And I'm a collector. I collect every single thing I've ever gotten in my life, every card, every school project, everything is in that box. Actually, there's 3 boxes to be exact, but one of the boxes I opened up, I have kept every single planner I've ever written in. I opened my 2021 planner and I saw it written there in black and white. It said, NK's going to start a podcast. That was 4 years ago. And I was so scared too. I knew I had things that were very fruitful and a lot of life experiences that I can really help other people with. I knew that deep down. I wouldn't have written that in my planner if I didn't fully mean it. I know that because I know myself so well. So to write that down 4 years ago, have it in the back of my head, feeling a little scared because I didn't know how to start a podcast. I also didn't know about the equipment. I didn't know the editing software. So much self-doubt. I was like, no one is going to listen to this podcast. Who am I to get on a mic and talk? I doubted everything. I can really go into a whole bit on how much I self-doubted. I looked at all these big New York City influencers and I looked at all of these celebrities who had a podcast, and obviously they have a huge following. They have support from networks and agencies to back them on getting bigger and better episodes and viewership and marketing. They had it all. What do I have? I literally just have a mic and my brain and my voice. I questioned so much about myself. I questioned, who am I? But then I flipped the script and I said, why not me? I've grown up so much in myself in the last 4 years. Specifically, the confidence I've gained in myself through lived experiences, through getting bullied on the internet, through metaphorically and physically falling down and getting back up again. I have learned so much about my threshold, who I am, and I will never apologize for it because I know I have something really special that literally no one can replicate, which is why I have a podcast. I bring a unique voice to the space. And no, I was not ready, but I couldn't keep on putting off my dream. And I don't want you to either. I do not want you to put off your dream any longer, because the more you put it off, you are just letting yourself down at the end of the day. You are. And I don't want that for you. Small steps are still steps in the right direction. And you do owe it to yourself to uphold the promises you make to yourself. It shows that you can trust yourself, and trust is the single most important component to actually achieving anything you want. So you're probably asking yourself, how do you build trust in yourself? What I will say is you do the things you say you're going to do. And I know that that sounds so simplified, but here's the thing. A lot of life, people force things to be complicated that aren't. You do the things you say you're going to do. You develop your discipline, as we've spoken about. You try, you fail, and you try again. You get back up again. So now I want you to write down 3 goals you haven't completed for 2025. Be honest with yourself as well, okay? You are not doing yourself any service if you lie to yourself and if you are not super upfront with yourself about this process. So you're going to write down 3 things that you have not accomplished this year, either ones you've written down at the beginning of this year or ones that you make up right now as you're listening to this episode. Make them attainable. but give yourself a challenge because remember, we are striving for better. And I promise you will be so proud. You will be so very proud of yourself for setting a goal and achieving it. It will unlock more trust in yourself and it will allow you to reach for bigger and better goals in the new year. I hope this episode helped at least one person feel more comfortable and confident about attaining the goals you have for yourself. Your goals are not too small. You are capable, and I cannot wait to see what you accomplish by the end of this year. And with that, thank you so much for listening to another episode of Misunderstood. Remember to rate this podcast 5 stars on Apple and Spotify and follow it wherever you are listening. Join our Geneva group chat. It is always linked in the description of every single podcast episode. Hang out with me on my other socials, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Pinterest at NK Madani. And I will talk to you guys in my next one.